Good afternoon and welcome to GPAC Talkback Thursday. I'm Amy Miller, Director of Programming and Education here at the Gouge Performing Arts Center. So excited, thrilled to invite our special guest to this Talkback today. Welcome, John Paul White.
How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be
here. Thank you all. Yeah, we're so excited to be working with you. We're excited for all of you who are joining us here on Facebook Live today. We have a half an hour with John Paul as we get ready for this evening's performance. Yeah, so he'll be performing here this evening at the Gouge Performing Arts Center at 7:30 p.m. Central Time in the U.S. And we're excited, so we're going to dig right in. I'm going to tell you all a little bit about John Paul. He is an acclaimed singer and songwriter based in Florence, Alabama, next door to historic Muscle Shoals. He has cultivated a 2-decade music career as a solo artist and as a member of the groundbreaking 4-time Grammy Award-winning duo, The Civil Wars. And this last year, he released The Hurting Kind, an album that plays tribute to the country music of his childhood. So thanks for being here again.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and just to let you all know that are joining us, he is one of 3 artists that are on our GPAC Live Alabama Artist Series this fall. And it's our chance here at the Gouge Center during these times to stay connected with our community, stay connected with artists across our region and across Alabama. And we're really committed to supporting artists of Alabama and telling stories and having conversations about this great state and all the different places around this state. So let's dig in, John Paul. I'm curious for you what it means to be rooted here in Alabama. You could speak to that.
It means more each year of my life. When I was younger, all I could think about was getting out of here, as most youngsters are. Your hometown isn't cool. Your state isn't cool. Everything else is. Mm-hmm. And so my thought was I'd always go. And for whatever reason, by the time I was able to, I'd fallen deeply in love with my surroundings, and I started appreciating my roots, started appreciating the things that I had around me every day without even having to really think about it, things that I had taken for granted growing up here. Once I started traveling, I started realizing the abundance of fantastic people and music and fashion and food, and but also my family's roots are here as well. Mm-hmm. So every year I get a little bit more entrenched and a little bit more in love with where I'm from.
Yeah, amazing. And being from the border of Tennessee and Alabama, right?
Right. So I'm native of none, I guess. I was born in Alabama. I was born in Tuscumbia at Helen Keller Hospital.
Okay.
And grew up once I got to school, I was in Loretta, Tennessee, which is right on the border as well. And then after high school, moved to Florence. So I'd never lived outside of about a 20-mile radius in my life. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that it's a huge part of who I am, but also a huge part of my music, because not to date myself, but I come from a generation that you are musically influenced so much by your surroundings, by your parents' records, and by your friends' records and the local radio stations. Because when I was cutting my teeth, there was no internet. There also wasn't cable. There wasn't MTV, anything like that. So the only things I knew about was what was going on in my own backyard. And at times I lament what's going to be the loss of that, because my kids are subjected to every type of music that's ever been made across the entire world in the history of music, anytime they want. Yeah. And I would have lost my mind in a wonderful way if I'd had that at my fingertips. But I also think it's going to harm the idea of a regional music.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. What do you think it's done for you in terms of being able to really dive deep into the music and the sound of the land that you're from, of the place that you're from?
Well, there's perks to being from a fairly rural state, and Florence is not a big town, you know that. But being from Loretta, it's just, you really don't have a lot of distractions. You really can laser focus on what you love and dig down into it, and there's not a whole lot of fat to cut through. It's you and a guitar and 3 chords, and you're making the most of it. At least until I got to college, that was, the way I had to approach things. And so you learn to do everything you possibly can with primary colors.
Mm-hmm. Can you speak about those primary colors? What yours are? Your instrument?
Mine is acoustic guitar, and I grew up playing piano because I had to. I did not enjoy it at all. The beauty of it is that all the theory that came along with that informs my guitar playing. So there's things that I inherently know without having had guitar lessons that I can attribute to my piano background. But growing up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, I knew very few chords at all. And so most of the writing I was doing, I was just making stuff up as I went, finding chord shapes that sounded cool to me. And then I'd retune my guitar because certain chords would be easier to play that way. Just pure experimentation because, out of necessity. And I think if I'd had guitar lessons, I think if I'd been around more musicians early and been told, the right way to play, who knows if I'd be where I am now, because I think because of everything being so basic, I was able to come up with my own style that worked best for me and not, what I was supposed to play.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. So welcoming everyone that's joining us today. I'm here, Amy Miller, Director of Programming and Education here at Jay and Susie Gooch Performing Arts Center. I'm just giving a reminder for those who are just joining us. This is our special guest, John Paul White. He's performing tonight at 7:30. And we're digging into the sound, right, and the instruments that we use to tell our stories. And we've been able to be in residency, a short residency here with John Paul, working with students yesterday with our music department, and then this evening's performance, and then tomorrow morning we have a school performance at 10 a.m. that will be live streaming from our stage as well. So there's been a lot of conversations during our time with you around telling stories and around using these instruments that you've chosen for yourself or maybe have chosen you. But you've also shared with us about your songwriting style and influences. Can you speak a bit to that?
Sure. As I've told you, the difference between my songwriting and my guitar playing is that I probably am more classically trained as a songwriter, because I didn't really start seriously writing songs until college. I wrote some stuff in and around high school, but when I finally met my mentor, Walt Aldridge, who's there in Florence, Alabama, it was trial by fire. It was just, he saw promise in the couple of songs that I presented to him, and I just jumped in with both feet and started learning to write. And he would critique, the stuff I did. He would give me pointers, and he was very careful not to try to get me to write songs like he writes, but to help with the craft and, try this, leave this out next time, or the song is so long, maybe your song idea is too broad and you need to whittle it down and make it more about a moment and not about, and not write a short story. And that was really good for me. I probably, grew as a songwriter exponentially over what other people would do over the same amount of time. But at the same time, I was getting to write with other writers, and not just my friends. They were, hit songwriters, or at least professional songwriters that were doing it all the time and had been signed to deals. So every day I learned something. Every day I'd get just a little bit more insight into, oh, I see what he's doing there. I can use that. And also picking up on how other songwriters would use their own biographical information in their songs in a vague way to put their heart in it, but also not make it so specific that others would want to sing it. Because that's what my job was, is to write songs that others would sing. That was fantastic for me because I still employ that so that when you listen to my music, it's not just intensely personal and just specific to only me. You can see yourself in the song. You can become the protagonist, and I keep it just vague enough that you will hear what you want to hear. And sometimes that makes me look like a lot better songwriter than I am, because people think I'm talking about things that I am not necessarily, but that's perfectly fine. You've fallen for my trick.
Right.
Because Walt used to tell me, like, I would mention, I would mention a wedding band in a song. And he said, you should leave that out. And I said, well, why? He said, well, if it's in there, then the only people that are going to be able to relate to this song are people that are married or people that are in a relationship. And you've just excluded everyone else. And they just have to, kind of extrapolate what they can. He said, you leave that one object out and you've included everyone. And it's so powerful, that omission is so much more powerful than having it there. And so I use that to great effect.
It's fantastic. Yeah, the microphone is quite the powerful tool. Yeah, and the recording studio. Speaking of recording studios, you come from a very special place in the history of our country's music, the sound, as well as global influence, an immense global influence out of the Shoals. Can you speak a bit about that, about the studios, about the sound?
Yeah. I guess growing up around here, you assume that everyone has the same heritage, that every town has recording studios with that hits came out of. It's not the case. And it took a little bit of traveling for me to really appreciate that, to have that in my backyard, to have that business card, if you will, when I, meet people across the world. I could mention anytime they'd say, where are you from? More often than not, I'd say Muscle Shoals, even though I don't live in Muscle Shoals, but it's all kind of the same thing. And oh man, they'd perk up and they would pay attention a little bit more. You got in the door, you got their, you piqued their interest, and so you had a little leg up on where you would have been. But at the same time, I also was just fascinated with the fact that so much music had been created in my backyard. I didn't have to go anywhere to do it. Not only did I not have to go anywhere to create it, but I had proof that these people had been successful from my little town. And it leveled the playing field for me not to have to go to Nashville or to New York or to LA and feel that sense of power, that I have proof that you can do it from this area. So I can check that off the list and not use that as a crutch. Said, well, I live out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's going to pay attention to my music. I had, concrete evidence that was not the case. So it gives you a little bit more gumption to chase this a little harder than you would have.
Mm-hmm. And to have that support, that community support is huge. You had mentioned walking and saying, I'm a musician, and having support.
Yes, to not be looked at in a funny way, like, oh, you don't have a real job.
Right.
You don't get that in most jobs. But also the other musicians and songwriters and producers there all support each other. They all link arms. They'll help you get gigs, help you get in on sessions and write songs, and introduce you to all the numerous amazing people in their Rolodex all over the business. And that was, again, I had huge advantages from being in that area. Now, at the end of the day, Walt used to say this, like, all that's great, But then you got to put up or shut up. Then you got to have quality material. All those things will help you get the door cracked open. But you've got to do all the work, and you got to push the door open and keep it open. And I'm very fortunate that what I do, what I love to do, there are other people that dig it. I've got a lot of heroes that really didn't click with the majority. What they did was just too eclectic, was just too left of center, was too unique, and so they had a really tiny base. And it's the thing you can't control in this business is, the one thing you can control is you'll know at the end of the day if you wrote something that you dearly love and that you can't wait to run out of the room and play for somebody. That's the only thing you can control. And from that point, you just have to put in the work to find one person that likes what you do, and 2 people, and 3 people, and 4 people. It's a long, long road, but those people will be with you for till death do you part. They will be solid, true fans. And in this climate that we live in, that's what you need. You don't need to be a trend or a fad or the new hot thing. That's fine and all, but people will just jump back off the bandwagon when it's not trendy. You need those true fans that will stick with you from now on.
So grounded in your space and your storytelling and writing, but also almost grounded within your fan base, right? And who you're bringing into that music. Yeah.
Very much so, because it's a personal transaction. They feel personal ownership because your songs reflect their life. And so it's different than just turning on the radio and listening to what's given to you and being entertained. It means more. It's a part of your story too. And that's why I still do it, because I've done more than I ever dreamed I'd get to do. But being part of those personal transactions and that connection and seeing people's eyes when you sing about something that's hard to talk about and know that you've just said for them what they couldn't articulate, that's what keeps me doing it. Because the romantic sexy side of this wears off pretty early after your 5th year in a row of a 15 passenger van playing tiny clubs to 17 people. You really have to have other reasons for loving it than commerce. And that's harder every year. So I would implore everyone, make that their priority and not making money.
Yeah. And then we head into 2020, right? And what that's a whole nother story, right? That we're in the midst of. And you were talking about writing a song and not being able to wait until you could share it with others, right? And now sharing is completely changed at this point.
I mean, live streams and stuff were fun for a while, performing, and I did a little bit of it. I'd just pop in and out on somebody would have a little show and ask me to do a song or 2. And it's novel. It's the cool thing about it is, people that live really out in the middle of nowhere that can't go to shows. Shows don't come anywhere near them, live shows at least. And so they get to see that artist that they dearly love and see them in their home probably. So it's even more personal and, warts and all, and tuning their guitars and their dog running through the room. That's fantastic. You get to know the artist a little bit differently and a little bit better. But at some point, the new wears off. And if you're not in the same space, feeling the energy of the crowd or the lack of energy of the crowd, where you know that you need to turn on a dime and do something else, it's not the same. It's a means to an end, but it'll never be the transaction that keeps people coming back and keeps us in a job, that's just that's not viable.
Indeed. We hope to rush out of these times of social distancing in terms of performance. But while we're in them, yeah, we're opening up this series with you tonight. And this is the first performance to a somewhat audience, right? We'll have a few dozen, a little bit more than that in our audience, completely socially distanced.
Yeah.
And viewers all over the world have signed up for tonight. So
that's great.
Excited to see you. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think it, but I haven't played to a person since March, other than y'all when y'all came up and I played a little bit.
Okay.
Not in the same space. So it'll probably be emotional. I hope that I don't just, start, I pass out from because I also haven't sang a lot, and I haven't tuned guitars and switched guitars and pushed pedals and all that stuff too. So it'll be a very intimate performance.
Yeah, we're here for you. Well, we're all going through this together. We're all learning and relearning and scheduling and rescheduling and doing all of this together. So yeah, thrilled to have you. And during these times also, we've been talking off before this about other ways that we're staying alert or creative or engaged with others, even if it's right within our street or within our local community. You said you've been reading quite a bit. How do you feel that's kept your creative mind, or has that shifted your songwriting thinking? Or
I was killing multiple birds, I think, with one stone. I think what the initial impetus was, I couldn't get creative for the life of me. I'd sit down in front of a piece of paper and just stare at it. And I think part of that was because I'm not really living, I'm not really out there experiencing the world. I'm in the trenches with my family, and we're, closer than ever. And that's been a positive side to this, obviously, but I'm not out, I'm not talking to folks. I'm not feeling other people's pain. I'm not, having deep conversations with anybody and pulling song material from it. So I've just been in a rut and couldn't write. And I thought, well, I need to do something else creative that might stimulate that. And so I called my friends Andy Baxter of Penny and Sparrow and Adam Morrow, who plays guitar with me, but also has a couple of bands, Del Rey and Speckled Bird. And they live close by. They can both pretty much walk. And I've got a fire pit behind my studio, and we sit distant and talk about books. We started a book club, and every week it's a different novel, and it's all over the map. It's Stephen King to William Faulkner to Raymond Carver to Shirley Jackson. It's all over the place. And so some of it's really tough, and some of it's a little bit more pulp and fun and entertainment. So that has been incredibly helpful for me to get out of my own head and pick apart somebody else's work and see how people are, attacking some of the same ideas that are in my head, see a different viewpoint, different point of view. That's been fantastic. But really, the thing that helped the most is talking to some other guys that are, they have their own issues with the pandemic, and they're all musicians and they're all writers. So we're all kind of the same side of the brain. That's been really as cathartic as anything, is just to feel like I'm not alone.
Absolutely. To not feel isolated. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of not alone and talking about Penny and Sparrow and all these artists in this community and in this region, you've been part of Single Lock Records and the founding of that. Can you mention that for our audience? Tell them a bit about the cool locale up there.
Yeah. Single Lock was born, I guess, about 8 years ago. And the entire premise around it was just, getting capital for artists that, that's what their main hindrance was, being able to make a proper record. And get in a van and just tour and have merch, have product to be able to sell. I still feel like that's really the most important thing for any artist to be doing, is making records that people can't stop listening to and playing shows that people can't stop talking about. And that's the type of artists that we try to sign. It started out with people in our backyard just because there was so much great talent here in Alabama that we didn't need to look farther. But we've worked with, people from Australia and up in Jersey and Texas and Louisiana, and it's bounced around a lot. And it was fun after the hiatus of the Civil Wars for me to get out of my own head and try to help other artists facilitate their vision, and it not be about me anymore, because I was sick of anything being about me for a while. So it was therapeutic for me, but I also felt I slept really well at night knowing that I was able to at least help some artists not make bad decisions, head people up at the pass with things that, I have failed at, and to give them that that insight, I think is helpful.
Yeah, passing on the wisdom is great. Well, you have quite the lineup of artists with Single Lock. It's just wonderful to follow the artists that you're working with and supporting as well. Yeah.
Well, we have structured this to where we pretty much only work with artists that we dearly love, dearly want to help, dearly want to listen to their music, that we think the world is a lesser place without them, so it's, in some ways it feels like philanthropy, it feels like making the world a better place. And so we keep our budgets pretty low and reasonable so that our success doesn't hinge on one record, and we don't have to just put one record out and have to dump an artist because it didn't go gold. Who does that anyway? So we're lucky that we just get to work with people that we are fans of.
Wonderful. But it's coming back to those Alabama roots, right? And those Southern roots of really lifting each other up via community, via your strong community, passing it on, right? And then standing on the shoulders of those who've come before.
I think so, because the Shoals is known for a lot of great music in the past, but that's not doing us any good. We have to make our own. We have to cut our own hay, and that's been fun to show that the Shoals still has vitality, that it's still relevant, and that there's still great things can be created there and can succeed. And we don't have to just talk about the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah. I think the South is sometimes overlooked in that way, right? There's a lot of, we could go on and on about that, but a lot of thought of what has happened and not acknowledging the vitality and the creativity and the talent of this region and in Alabama. I know
we owe them a debt. We probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. All that talent and vitality probably wouldn't exist if it weren't for them. So
100%.
We definitely respect and honor and love our ancestors. These are our heroes and idols, but also our friends, and have helped us out. But they would be the first to say, make some new stuff. Do something else. Do something to make this, make us proud. Let's not just keep regurgitating what we did in the past, because they're not interested in doing that. So I don't know why we should.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, we're all so grateful and fortunate to have you as a musician here performing tonight, but also to call you an Alabama artist and to be working with you on this. And I'm one great fan of The Hurting Kind and of your work. It's one of those albums for me that I can play over and find new ideas and new thoughts and new lyrics. I know the team here at the Gooch Center has just been very excited to welcome you and to hear your voice here tonight. So there's a lot of pride around who we hold dear here in this state and the South as well. So we're gonna have fun tonight and lift that up. Just reminding all of the folks joining us here this afternoon, a special guest, John Paul White. He is here to kick off our GPAC Live Alabama Artist Series here at the Jay and Susie Gooch Performing Arts Center. I want to remind folks how to get tickets for tonight. You can still register. Ideally, please try to register before 4 p.m. push folks to our website. It is gougecentertickets.auburn.edu. It's all free. You register, you'll get a link to the performance in your email. I want to send out a very special thank you to Auburn Opelika Tourism for their generous support of the performance tonight and the engagement that we've been having fun with John Paul, engaging with the community. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you on our stage tonight.
See you then.
All right. Thank you.